You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Health Hub. I'm Cathy Biase, your host, and along with our producer, Alex Diaz, we would like to welcome you to our show this Tuesday morning. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm good. I'm doing well, thank you.
Doing well. We have a busy place today. I couldn't find a parking spot.
Yes, so there's a lot of additional programming and various meetings that are going on presently, which is all to do with this year's preparation of our 25th anniversary on some level.
On some level, yeah. All the rooms are booked. We had to move people out of my room for the show. It's fun to see a lot of people here.
Yeah, it's very energizing.
It is energizing. Are you involved in these meetings, or are you just a bystander?
On some level, I'm.
You're in and out.
In and out on most of them, but
excellent.
That's okay.
Yeah, it is. It's nice to see the hustle and bustle in here. Excellent. So as you can tell, today's show is live. Our number is 416-245-1534 if you'd like to call in. And please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on all three sites. And do feel free to email us at thh@radiomaria.ca if you have any questions, concerns, topics you'd like us to cover, anything of the like. We always like to hear from you. So it's been a busy week, Alex. We've had the Raptors at 15 wins. They're on a tear. I now know which movies I should be teeing up to watch from the Oscars. All is good.
I know. Actually, I actually happened to see Joker.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it happened to win a couple of.
It did. He's
couple of awards.
Yeah, that's a little dark. I'm not sure that's one of the ones. I'm more along the lines of, I want to see Little Women.
Mm-hmm.
And
I never got around to that.
No, I saw a few of them. I didn't see the one that won all the awards, Parasite. To be perfectly frank, I'd never even heard of it.
Exactly. I'm like that as well. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was, well, my mom saw it actually, and I think it's all subtitles, but definitely one of the ones that I do want to see. But that it was a good night. And
actually, yesterday I went to see Bad Boys, the third movie with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence.
I heard that was really funny.
It was really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, those are types of movies I do like to watch. Sometimes the winners of the award, the movies are just I don't know, too artsy. Some of them for me to, I kind of like to go and be entertained.
Yeah,
I did see 1917. It was really good, but it again, it was more of a...
It took home a few Oscars, I believe, too. Yeah.
It did, but it was good. It was good. It was fun to watch. And it's only Tuesday, and all this has happened. The weather's been great, and we still have, or I still have my husband's birthday this week and Valentine's Day. So it's a busy week, fun week. Who says February is a bad month? The weather's been great. We're moving on, and let's just get to this before I forget. Please do subscribe to our podcast. We are the Health Hub on iTunes, SoundCloud, all your favorite podcast platforms, and you can also find all of our podcasts on the Radio Maria Canada website, which is radiomaria.ca, and on my website, which is cathybiase.com. I think we're up to date with all of the podcasts. Last week was Spiro with the Goat Show, and that's doing quite well. I guess a lot of people are interested in that topic because it's come out now and it's doing quite well. So please do take a listen. We have fantastic guests, great topics, very interesting topics, including today's, which I cannot wait to get to, on compassion with Dr. Trzeciak. But before that, I did segue quite nicely, as you might pick up on there, Alex. I segued into Valentine's Day. And let's talk about, now it's dinner time, cards and roses and chocolate. So I thought I might pick up on one of those and have a little discussion because of the timely topic. So let's talk about chocolate. So all of the chocolate products that we get, whether in boxes or bars, come from cacao seeds, which come from the cacao tree. It's an evergreen tree that grows in South America and West Africa. And cacao seeds they come from little pods that are on, or not even that little, that are on the tree trunks of these trees. And they are harvested and made into, and by various means, into all the chocolate products that we have. So cacao is different from cocoa, so we'll make that distinction very clearly. But cacao itself is really a superfood. It contains lots of antioxidants, a good amount of iron, calcium, and magnesium. And it also contains something called theobromine, which is a bitter compound from the seed. And it can help boost mood and energy. And I think that it's this last little piece that may be the reason that chocolate is so widely bought and consumed in and around Valentine's Day, because to carry this one step further, this mood boosting and energy has been, since the time of the Aztecs, made chocolate be considered to be an aphrodisiac. So here we go in the line of how chocolate sort of came into be for Valentine's Day. So a little bit of a ditty on the history of it. But some people are a little bit afraid of having chocolate per se. If you don't get the right chocolate, the dark chocolate, it is quite a sugar spike. Mm-hmm. But I thought instead, this may be a new product, a new food ingredient that you had not heard of before. It is definitely not as sweet as full-blown chocolate for certain, but it can be used in a variety of ways, and one of them is in a smoothie. So I thought my Valentine's Day gift for you would be a recipe for one of my favorite. It's really become one of my favorite smoothies, maybe because of the peanut butter ingredient that I have in it that I haven't been able to have in our house. My son has a peanut allergy, and he's not living at home for the next few months, so we've been sneaking it into the house. But this really is such a delicious smoothie for me, so I thought I'd share it for you to try and maybe incorporate a new ingredient into your pantry. So the shake consists of a frozen banana. I mean, if you don't have a frozen banana, obviously you can have a fresh banana. Frozen is best. It just makes it your smoothie that much colder, which I really appreciate. A generous teaspoon of peanut butter. Now, you play with these ingredients, of course. If you're a huge peanut butter fan, then, add more. If you prefer not to have peanut butter, you can certainly add almond butter, any seed butter that you like, 1 to 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. So this gives it a really nice punch of sweetness without too much sweetness. So I would start with 1 tablespoon, see how it goes, and then if you need it a little bit sweeter, then maybe add a bit more. But maple syrup also adds a whole lot of minerals to your smoothie that other things may not. You could certainly replace it with a date if you want. Add a tablespoon of cacao, and then you could also, then I want you to add some of milk, so you can add any type of milk you like. I usually go with almond milk, and then you can add ice if you want to deepen that the coldness of it. So you blend all that together, and it is just such a delightful smoothie. You can put a little bit of the cacao on top. If you want to even deepen more of the nutrients, you can add some bee pollen, and I would just sprinkle that on the top. You could certainly add your flax, your hemp, and your chia seed, but it really is a delicious smoothie. So give it a shot. It's a nice little treat on Valentine's Day for yourself if you're not going to be getting any treats from somebody else, or you can make it for your family. So let's move on then to today's show. We are going to be talking with Dr. Stephen Trzeciak. He is a physician scientist, chief of medicine at Cooper University Healthcare, and professor and chair of medicine at Cooper Medical School of Rowan University in Camden, New Jersey. Dr. Trzeciak is a practicing intensivist. I practice that word, I'm telling you so many times. A practicing intensivist.
Well done.
Thank you. And a National Institute of Health funded clinical researcher with more than 100 100 publications in the scientific literature, primarily in the field of resuscitation science. Dr. Trzeciak's publications have been featured in prominent medical journals such as Journal of American Medical Association, so that's JAMA, Circulation, and the New England Journal of Medicine. His scientific program has been supported by research grants from the American Heart Association, the National Institute of General Medicine Sciences, and the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, with Dr. Trzeciak serving in the role of Principal Investigator. Currently, Dr. Trzeciak's research is focused on a new field called Compassionomics, in which he is studying the scientific effects of compassion on patients, patient care, and those who care for patients. He is author of the best-selling book Compassionomics, the revolutionary scientific evidence that caring makes a difference. For this work, he was awarded the 2019 Influencers of Healthcare Award by the Philadelphia Inquirer. Dr. Trzeciak also serves as a member of the Global Compassion Council for nonprofit organization Charter for Compassion. Broadly, Dr. Trzeciak's mission is to make healthcare more compassionate through science. Dr. Trzeciak is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. He earned his medical degree at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and his Master's of Public Health at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He completed his residency training at the University of Illinois at Chicago and his fellowship in critical care medicine at Rush University Medical Center. He is board certified in internal medicine, critical care medicine, emergency medicine, and neurocritical care. This is going to be a wonderful show. Dr. Trzeciak has done at least one TED Talk that I've listened to. He's fascinating to listen to. The fact that he has researched the emotion of compassion through science is truly cutting edge and fits so nicely into what we're doing here on the Health Hub. We have many learning points that are going to come out, but we do want to focus on an understanding of what Compassionomics is, why it's important to healthcare in Dr. Trzeciak's estimation, and can compassion actually fit into and be a part of our Western healthcare system. So we will be back to talk to Dr. Trzeciak in a few minutes.
You have whispered words of comfort in the wind. You know everything about me. Before my life began, you held me in your hand. You have walked these roads before me. You have known the pain a broken heart can bear. Won't you help me now to trust you? Every single day I follow in your way. I live for you, I live for you. When I think of all your love it's done for me, I live for you. Never looking back to what life used to be. I live for you. Everything I ever thought was mine, I give it all away to have you in mine. I see you in the crystal waters, and I have felt you in the dark of my despair. You have shown love unfailing, river running deep, that's welling up in me. I live for you, I live for you. When I think of all your love it's done for me, I live for you. Never looking back
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Cathy Biase.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, our show is live. If you'd like to call in, our number is 416-245-1534. And please do follow us on our social sites. We are at the Health Hub RMC on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Dr. Trzeciak, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedule to spread the word of this great topic that you are so deeply embedded with.
Cathy, thank you, and many thanks to Alex as well. It's an honor to be on the Health Hub.
It's such, I found you when I was sort of looking through the TED Health Talks, and it gripped me. It truly gripped me. I work with cancer patients, and this is an area that, honestly, health practitioners, through no fault of their own, may be too busy, as you are a practitioner yourself, and we'd like to hear your story. Compassion just may not fit into the Western model because of timing. How did you stumble upon this area, and why did it take hold of you so deeply?
Really, it started with an unexpected question from a 12-year-old. So I was studying resuscitation science. I was studying brain injury after cardiac arrest. As you mentioned in the intro, I'm an intensivist, so I'm a specialist in intensive care medicine. And as far as I was concerned, I wasn't in the market for any kind of a change in trajectory in my research program. Everything was going as planned. We were getting grants from the NIH here in the U.S. We were publishing in some of the best journals, and we were hitting every milestone for success. But then I got this unexpected question from a 12-year-old, and that was my son. So he was preparing a talk for his class at school, and he asked me for help. And the question that he had to speak to is, what is the most pressing problem of our time? That was in the 7th grade. Now, I don't know what you were doing in the 7th grade, but I was not doing what is the most pressing problem of our time.
That's quite deep.
Yeah, so fast forward to the end of the story, I challenged him that, of course, there's no one single most pressing problem of our time, but the main question is, what is the most pressing problem for you through your lens of experience? So for him, through his lens of experience as a young person. And then he challenged me back. And I, through a period of introspection, had to ask myself, what's the most pressing problem of our time through my lens of experience as a physician scientist and in healthcare. And as I looked through the biomedical evidence, I became convicted. My eyes were open to a stark reality that in healthcare, there's an abundance of that scientific evidence and other evidence showing that we are in the midst of a compassion crisis. So specifically, I can tell you that in the U.S., there is very rigorous data to show that nearly half of Americans believe that the healthcare system and our healthcare providers are not compassionate. Numerous rigorously conducted scientific studies have shown that physicians miss 60 to 90% of opportunities to respond to patients with compassion, and that compassion actually comprises less than 1% of physician statements to patients in the context of an office visit. There's data that in critical care medicine, the healthcare team very rarely expresses compassion to patients and families in the ICU environment. In office settings, there's Mayo Clinic data to show that on average we interrupt people 11 seconds into the statement of their main complaint, when the evidence shows that they only need 26 seconds on average to actually tell you what's really on their mind. There's a burnout crisis in healthcare right now where a third or more of physicians specifically are suffering from depersonalization, which is an inability to make a personal connection. And in the era of electronic health records, there's very compelling evidence that healthcare providers currently spend more time looking into computer screens than looking their patients in the eyes. So based on all of these data and other data, I conclude that we have a compassion crisis in healthcare.
And did you coin this term Compassionomics, or has this been an existing study?
Well, my colleague Anthony Mazzarelli and I, in writing the book Compassionomics, we were essentially speaking to an approach that, in our opinion, hadn't really been used before. So for decades, there have been very important voices in medicine that have been calling for more help, for more compassion. And if we're being honest, we're not moving the needle at all. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence, including what I already shared with you, that it's actually getting worse, not getting better. And so we thought that a different approach is needed. And so rather than taking a moral or ethical approach to compassion in healthcare or an emotional, sentimental approach, we wanted to take a scientific approach because the other approaches weren't working. And the approach that we wanted to take was the approach that a researcher would take. What is the evidence? Let's apply rigorous scientific principles to evaluate the evidence. We use a methodology called systematic review. And the term Compassionomics came up because we found an abundance of evidence that compassion matters not just in meaningful ways, like we might think, but also in measurable ways. And so we call it Compassionomics because it's the convergence of the science and the art of medicine. When I share the data that there's a compassion crisis in healthcare, one natural question that could flow from that is, so what? Does compassion really matter? Now, of course, you could say, of course, compassion matters. It's a cornerstone of the art of medicine. We have a moral and ethical imperative to treat patients with compassion. And of course, I agree, and I've always agreed, but that's not the question. The question is compassion just the art of medicine, or are there also evidence-based effects belonging in the science of medicine? So we spent 2 years going through the biomedical literature, through the National Library of Medicine, or PubMed, as it's called, and we found more than 1,000 scientific abstracts that we reviewed. There are more than 280 original science research papers that are buried in the text of Compassionomics and cited in the back if anybody wants to actually go to the literature itself. Compassionomics is just our way to frame it as we need to start thinking of compassion in scientific terms because there actually are measurable effects rather than just thinking about it in emotional or moral ethical terms as if compassion is just a nice to have. It's actually more than that. The evidence points to the fact that compassion is beneficial for patients, for patient care, and those who care for patients. And in Compassionomics, we try to show you all the data, of course, intermixed with stories and stories that really bring the data to life. But we just took a different approach, and that's where Compassionomics came from.
We're still in a Western world, and as much as we are trying to bring in more integrative approaches, in the area of acupuncture and things like that are recognized scientifically, science moves the needle. We are still of that mindset that science moves the needle. And that's why what you have done and what you've pulled together, I think, is profound because you can move the needle. Compassion, one would say, is part of being human. Why have we lost this? Did we ever have it in the Western medical system? How you talked about the how, but why is it not a piece of the medical system?
Well, some would argue that there's been an erosion, that perhaps it was better at one point in time, and perhaps that's even one could argue that we're seeing a decline in compassion in society in general, so perhaps it's just bleeding over into healthcare, no pun intended. So a rigorously conducted meta-analysis published by investigators from the University of Michigan showed that empathy, and we can talk about the difference between compassion and empathy if you'd like, but empathy is declining over time in this study, specifically in young people, like college-age people. It's been declining over the past 2 decades, and the decline in empathy is actually accelerating over time. That in addition to that, a Harvard University study, an education study that enrolled middle school and high school age students, asked them what they believed their parents valued the most from them. And the students overwhelmingly said that they valued, that their parents valued their achievements and their accolades more than their kindness for others. And in a very striking Pew Research study from the U.S. from just a couple of years back, fully 1/3 of Americans acknowledged that they didn't consider compassion to be among their core values. So there's perhaps a societal change in compassion over time, and perhaps it's just manifesting itself in healthcare.
Let's talk about, just before we go to break, and that's really a sad note, really it is. Let's talk about the difference between empathy and compassion. My understanding is empathy is sort of a natural flow. And can compassion and empathy be learned and taught?
Yeah, so first let's do the nomenclature piece. So although there is some debate about definitions and nomenclature in the scientific community, most people that do research on compassion define it like this. They define compassion as the emotional response to another's pain or suffering involving the authentic desire to help. So the key words there are response and help. It's different from empathy, which is a closely related term, yet distinct. So empathy is the detecting, feeling, and understanding component. Compassion goes beyond empathy in that it requires a responsive action. So we like to say empathy plus action equals compassion. Now, empathy is vitally important because if you don't detect and understand and feel somebody's pain and suffering, you'll miss it entirely. You'll never be motivated to take action with compassion. But compassion goes beyond to take some sort of responsive action. And there's actually neuroscience data to underscore this distinction. When you bear witness to suffering and someone with pain and suffering, it actually activates the pain centers in your brain. We know this from functional MRI studies, which can detect subtle differences in cerebral blood flow, so blood flow to the brain indicating what part of the brain is being activated at any given point in time. When you witness suffering, it hits you in the pain center of the brain, but when you take action to relieve someone's pain to some extent, it actually activates a different neural structure, an area of the brain that's essentially a reward center. It's associated with positive affect, so positive emotion and affiliation. It's a positive experience. So these are not just semantics, the difference between empathy and compassion. There's actually neuroscience showing how that they're actually distinct, but vitally important, both of them.
So you choose to be compassionate. You feel empathy, and you make the choice to be compassionate.
Most scientists would agree with your statement, yes, because it requires a responsive action, and you can either choose to respond or not.
Interesting. We're going to go to a break here. When we come back, we are going to continue with the conversation and pick up where Dr. Trzeciak talked about the reward center of compassion and how compassion not only affects a patient, but it also affects the person who is exhibiting the compassion. And when we come back for our break, we'll talk about that very interesting topic.
Of the rainbow, all the voices of the wind, every dream that reaches out to find where love begins, every word of every story, every star and every sky, every corner of creation lives to tell when words are not enough. With every breath I take, I will give thanks to God above. For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love. From the mountains to the valleys, from the rivers to the sea. Every hand that reaches out, every hand that reaches out to offer peace. Every simple act of mercy, every step to kingdom come. All the hope in every heart will speak what love has done. For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love. I'll be a witness in the silence if when words are not enough. With every breath I take, I will give thanks to God above. For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada. A Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, please call 416-245-1534. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Cathy Biase.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Dr. Trzeciak here about Compassionomics. It's a fascinating conversation, and I would be remiss if we don't get into the benefits of this for patients and patient givers. I just have so many other ways I want to go, but let's start with this. Dr. Trzeciak, can you give us how compassion works in both areas of healthcare, those receiving it and those giving it?
Sure. So when we went through all the evidence, we found more than 100 original science research papers on the effects of compassion for patients. Of course, we can't talk about 100 different papers today, but I can give you the general categories that these effects fit into. They are physiological, psychological, effects on patient self-care, so for how patients take care of themselves, as well as effects on the quality of health care. So in physiological terms, compassion for patients can modulate another person's physiology by having immune system effects, so they can be have lower duration and lower severity of the common cold. Research from Thomas Jefferson University has found that compassion is associated with optimal blood glucose control and fewer complications in patients with diabetes. Perhaps it's because they adhere to their medication regimen more tightly when they trust their physician who cares for them deeply. Another example is that compassion can modulate a patient's perception of pain. We know this from experimental science in laboratories as well as in clinical studies that have shown that compassion it doesn't eliminate pain, of course, because compassion can't do that, but it can attenuate someone's experience of pain to some extent. Pain perception is extremely complex. It's one of the most complex things in all of medicine. I'm not trying to make it overly simplistic, but there's evidence that compassionate care can lower the perception of pain in patients with low back pain, in patients with abdominal pain due to irritable bowel syndrome, in patients that have postoperative pain, as well as in patients with migraine headaches. Moving on to psychological domain, so it might be intuitive to you that treating someone with compassion when they have depression symptoms can help attenuate their depression symptoms. That's been shown repeatedly in the scientific literature, that the person of the therapist is actually a big component of the therapy. So it's not just the medications that are provided, it's actually the care that's provided. That's also been shown to be beneficial in anxiety and in other areas. Patient self-care is a big category for the effects on patients, because if you care deeply about patients and they know that, they feel it, they're more likely to take their medicine. And this has been shown over and over and over again. In fact, in some studies, it's even been shown that if patients are treated with a lack of compassion, they don't even go to the pharmacy in the first place to fill their prescription, probably because they don't trust the physician and they don't believe it's going to work. So there's quite a bit of evidence showing that compassion from caregivers is associated with better patient adherence to prescribed treatment regimens. Then in terms of quality of care, there's an abundance of data showing that when there is depersonalization, so an inability to make a personal connection, which really makes compassion impossible, it's more likely that a medical error is going to occur. So we can't infer causation there, that the lack of compassion is cause of medical error, but among people who have less compassion, they're more prone to making errors, and research from the Mayo Clinic has shown that that's most likely because they're more likely to cut corners if they don't have compassion for patients. And then also in terms of quality of care, when you care deeply about patients and they know that, they're more likely to disclose more in the medical interview. They're more likely to tell you what's really on their mind, especially if it's something that's very personal. And they're also more likely to remember your discharge instructions. And so it just enhances the quality of care in all ways. So that would be the effects, a summary of the effects of compassionate care on patients.
And then what about, we've sort of come cross purposes, and we've talked about effects on the physician. I know that there are more. You talk about the burnout effect with in the healthcare system, and how you've found that compassion, even on a personal note, you found that compassion can alleviate some of the burnout effects.
Absolutely. So I mentioned to you early in the program that I'm an intensivist. So I'm a specialist in intensive care medicine. And when you work in the ICU, like the one we have here at Cooper in Camden, it is an everyday occurrence when we're practicing that we meet people and their families on the worst day of their life. So after 20 years nearly of doing that, I came to a stark realization that I had every symptom of burnout myself. Burnout is an epidemic among healthcare providers, not just in the U.S., but broadly, globally, in fact. And burnout is a syndrome really of three things: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, which is the inability to make a personal connection, and then lastly, a feeling like you can't really make a difference. And it is affected with, it's associated with lower quality of care. It's very serious. It's considered by many people, including me, a public health crisis. And historically, people have thought, well, if you're burned out, that crushes compassion, so you can't be compassionate. And actually, when I was in training in the 90s, I remember the hidden curriculum of medical education was, don't care too much, because if you care a lot, you're more likely to get burned out. And the truth is, when you look in the scientific literature, and we went through 1,000 scientific abstracts in our hunt for these data, what we found is that we don't see a signal of that at all. In fact, what we see is an inverse association. Inverse meaning where there's high compassion, there's low burnout. Where there's high burnout, there's low compassion. And the way, after synthesizing all the evidence, the thing that makes the most sense, the clearest signal that we see, is that people who have low compassion probably don't build strong relationships with their patients. And when they don't build strong relationships with their patients, they don't get the fulfillment of taking care of people. They don't get the joy and fulfillment out of those relationships, and they're more prone to then to getting burned out under the same amount of stress. So when I was going through burnout myself, and I call this my N of 1 experiment, meaning there's one study subject in this experiment, and it was me. I was newly aware of this data that more compassion might actually be an antidote for burnout. And so what I tried to do was, rather than doing what I called escapism, which was what everybody recommends for burnout, which is like go on vacation, pull back, go on more nature hikes, go do yoga, do all these other things, as if the answer is to just get away from your patients as much as possible, and then everything will be fine. I thought that was probably not true. I intuitively, I thought that something had to fundamentally change at the point of care, and that the answer was in connection, not in escaping. So I decided very intentionally to try to connect more, not less, to sit down more with my patients and families in the ICU, not less, to care more, not less, and that also was true for my colleagues, to connect more with my colleagues, to connect more at home. Relationships build resilience, and resilience is resistance to burnout. And whether it's our relationships with our patients, with our colleagues, with anyone around us, those relationships are going to build resistance to burnout. And when I connected more, that's when the fog of burnout began to lift for me. So we have a whole chapter dedicated to this in our book, Compassionomics, and there are more than 20 original scientific papers referenced in there to show that compassion can be a powerful therapy for the giver, too.
Intuitively, I can understand why professionals who are dealing in crisis care would want to put up a protective shield. So you're saying that for these people leaning in, as you use the term in your TED Talk, leaning in and getting involved and getting to know patients that may very well not be with you in the near future is helpful.
It's a delicate balance. I think that the preponderance of evidence in the scientific literature shows that those people that just detach and don't care do the worst, because they will just have the empathy, which is the pain of witnessing suffering, but they won't have the fulfilling part of compassion. That being said, if you're asking me the question, is it possible to care too much to cause yourself some sort of harm by your involvement in witnessing suffering? Yes, I think there's also some intuitiveness that is also true. There's a neuroscientist at the Max Planck Institute in Germany by the name of Tanya Singer, who uses the term self-other distinction. Historically, others have used other terms for it, but I think that the best term for it is the Tanya Singer framing of self-other distinction, meaning you bear witness for suffering, you do something to try to alleviate it, but at the same time you realize, in self-other distinction, you realize that this devastating tragedy is not happening to you, and be thankful for that. And so self-other distinction, I think, is something that is a fascinating area for future research. It is a bit of a defense mechanism, but note in self-other distinction, we're not saying, hey, we're not going to care, we're going to detach and pull back. It's saying that while I'm fully engaged with my patient, I'm going to realize and be thankful for the fact that it's not happening to me, so that I don't have the psychological and emotional sequela myself, and so that I can be resilient and go on to care for others.
It does. I can understand from a physician's point of view where the conflict might be, and to have to make this choice to turn off. Compassion is to me is a basic human decency issue, and just the conflict of having to turn that compassion off for self-preservation in and of itself must be a conflicting thing, because we're coming from a place where physicians want to do what's best for their patient. So having to turn this off in and of itself, this ability to extend themselves beyond the screen and to take time in an appointment, this must be a very difficult thing for a physician, a surgeon, anybody in the healthcare line to do. So that in and of itself must bring a level of conflict. But do we have time? Do you have time in the Western model, to have a piece of your interview, your working with your patient, is there actually time for compassion to fit in?
So the short answer to your question is yes, and I'm going to suggest to you that it is the key here is mindset. So a study published in the Journal of General Internal Medicine by a group of investigators from Harvard University about 5 years ago reported that 56% of physicians said they do not have time for compassion. They don't have time for compassion. So it begs the question, how much time does it actually take? So I'm going to share with you a story, a group of investigators from Johns Hopkins University in cancer, which I know is very important to you, Cathy.
Mm-hmm.
They did a randomized control trial, so very scientifically rigorous. This was in a group of breast cancer survivors. And the primary outcome measure of their randomized control trial was anxiety among these cancer patients. And if you've ever been touched by cancer or had somebody close to you touched by cancer, you probably know that anxiety is a pretty important outcome measure.
I've had breast cancer myself.
So I'm gonna tell you what their intervention was that reduced anxiety in a measurable way in these cancer patients. So I could describe it for you, but I'm just going to read it to you. And it was a usual care consultation from an oncologist versus special care, which was just a little bit more. So here was the message from the oncologist at the beginning of the consultation. I know this is a tough experience to go through, and I want you to know I am here with you. Some of the things that I say to you today may be difficult to understand, so I want you to feel comfortable in stopping me if something I say is confusing or doesn't make sense. We're here together, and we'll go through this together. And then again, at the end of the consultation, the oncologist said, I know this is a tough time for you, and I want to emphasize that we're in this together. I'll be with you each step along the way. A measurable decrease in anxiety, how long did it take? It took 40 seconds. So 40 seconds is all it takes to make a measurable difference for a patient in need. And when we've dedicated actually a whole chapter to the issue of time in the book Compassionomics. The chapter is called The Power of 40 Seconds. And actually, when we went through all the evidence, we found that there were 5 studies in the literature, all of which reported it taking less than 60 seconds to make a meaningful compassion connection with a patient. So why do we have this disconnect where we say we don't have time and yet we know it takes less than a minute? I think it's a question of mindset. We often feel rushed, but when you actually consider how long it actually takes, I often tell people we can go through our days with the same brusque efficiency, or we can treat people with compassion. And if anyone had a stopwatch, they would find that it doesn't take any more time to treat people with compassion. I think it's an issue of mindset. When we feel hurried, we're less likely to help. That has been shown over and over again in psychological studies, going all the way back to the classical Good Samaritan study from Princeton University decades ago. And so when people feel like they're more in a rush, they're less likely to help. The question is, are they really in a rush or not? And yes, healthcare is busy, but I think if we don't have 40 seconds, I think that we should reconsider that, because the reality is we probably do. We're just choosing not to, or at least we're in a mindset where it's not possible. If we open our mind to the fact that it really doesn't take any more time, then we can treat people consistently with compassion.
And it makes a difference. And we'll end on a personal note on 2 fronts. When I met with my oncologist and she told me, we got this. I mean, she wasn't sitting down and holding my hand, and I don't think that's what I needed. She told me, we got this. Why are you? I was teary-eyed, and she said, we got this. Don't worry about things. We've got this. And whatever comes our way, we'll handle it. And that was my turning point. Right then and there, that was my turning point. Because I went into a bad place when I got diagnosed. It took me a couple of weeks, and after other things as well were part of the picture. But when she said to me, we've got this, I had a sense that I can A, get through it, and B, I can get through it successfully. And the second piece to what you have said is that in clinic, the complaints that I get the most, or the most stressful things when I'm working with cancer patients, is not their protocol, is not the fact that they have the disease. Is it the fact that they cannot communicate with their oncology team? And that is completely disheartening for them. And it makes a huge, huge, huge impact. And that's why I'm so happy that you took the time to be on the show with us, because I think what you're doing can make a profound statement and effect on not only, as you mentioned, the caregivers, but on patients. It can turn someone's outlook around completely. So thank you so much for joining us. Where can we get your book if we're interested in buying it?
So the book is called Compassionomics, the revolutionary scientific evidence that caring makes a difference, and you can get it on Compassionomics.com.
Thank you so much. And again, I really, really do appreciate and I support and I wish you all the success in your ventures.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been quite an honor to be on the Health Hub, Cathy.
Thank you very much. And everybody, we will talk to you next week on the Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted